Hello, my name's Christy Bolingbroke. I'm the Executive Artistic Director for the National Center for Choreography at the University of Akron. And tonight, as a part of our virtual artist talk series with Groundworks Dance Theater, we're very excited to welcome Flock. Please join me in welcoming Alice Klock and Florian Lochner. Woo! Virtual applause. I think if control is an illusion, we were just talking about, oh yeah, it's really quiet here. And like, as soon as we press go, I heard the sound design in the background with the, alert and the sirens. So good on you. How are y'all doing?
Very good.
Yes. Good. Just got out of a long day of rehearsal.
Not too long today.
Today was a little shorter.
We started a little earlier. Mm-hmm. A good day of rehearsal.
Okay, a good day. Any day we get to rehearse is a good day. Yes. The whole purpose of this is to get to understand and know y'all a little bit more in anticipation of Groundworks' upcoming fall performances, where they will premiere your new work. It is unique for us to get to speak with a choreographic duo. And I understand that you found or met each other as choreographic fellows with Hubbard Street Dance Chicago. So you're definitely familiar with long rehearsal days and getting to work together. Can you tell us more about that moment when you met?
Mm-hmm. The first moment?
However you want to edit it, it's fine.
Well, I remember when Florian came to audition, and often at Hubbard Street, someone would just kind of show up for a couple days and would be sort of integrated into rehearsal if the director was interested in getting to know them more. And Florian came and we were all like, he's going to get a job. Like it was very just has a very specific, very strong presence. And of course he got hired. And then that was 5 years into my time at Hubbard Street when Flo joined. And at first we didn't actually interact a ton, just a little.
Yeah, we didn't even partner so much together.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then kind of we started working, I was just mesmerized by Alice, how she moves. Like first rehearsal, I was like, who is this creature? I want to become friends with her. And then we started later also hanging out more and doing our own thing. We put each other in our pieces. And that's when everything kind of developed. Friendship and then collaboration.
Yeah. And at first we weren't so much creating together. We would, like Flo said, cast each other when we had the opportunity to create, but we weren't choreographing something as a team. And we discovered that through this sort of pop-up event where Hubbard Street dancers could create for this kind of installation show. And Florian wanted to make a piece about, it was a very complex piece, but it ended up being me doing this voiceover, and we were building all these tables, and we had just this ridiculously fun time, and it became a much more blended creation. And we realized, this is a very joyful way of making. And that kind of started us working on our lunch breaks together, working on the weekends, and just really committing this extra time to basically play. Just started as play.
I love that. Can you, and this is the last we'll spend in the past, but can you even articulate what kind of work did you make when you weren't a part of Flock, each of you? I'm curious how you might describe it as that chapter in your life as a choreographer.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. Well, I feel like it took a long time till I found my own little language. And with these things at Hubbard Street, you always had this opportunity to research and find your own movement and movement language and what you want to say with it. But I think for me, it was always what I was processing at that time. I tried to make pieces about, basically. If that was a piece of music I found, if that was something I read, if that was just life affecting me. And then that was always a big part of what then my piece will be. And it was always, I think, for me, emotions are very important. So I always try to like add that in, was a huge factor. And make the people feel good. That was also my goal normally with my choreography, that I make people feel good.
Mm-hmm.
That could be sad too, but a good sad, not the sad sad. Yeah.
What
Yeah.
about you, Alice?
My choreography on my own was always very brainy, especially in like the early phases of creating the piece. I loved like really conceptual stories and like building out characters for each of the people in my pieces. And this kind of like world building thing was my main focus, and very nerdy. And I developed this kind of like this spelling language with my hands, which was really literally just like take my concept, break it down into words, build it into something with my hands, then build it into movement. It was like a fairly laborious, slow process in a way. And that was just kind of like my entry point to finding my own unique flavor, was really just like narrowing things down a lot with this real focus on what is the story I'm telling. And sometimes those were angsty stories, sometimes they were super silly stories. But yeah, that was sort of like the world building thing was my main thing.
I mean, maybe this is not news to y'all, but just hearing you so far, Florian, you started with like the emotional, and the fact, Alice, that you started with the brainy sounds already like a beautiful little compliment to each other. And still, you know, shared a lot, if I were to draw the Venn diagram between like the, you know, what you're responding to and eventually getting to both the emotional and to the brain. But it's that where you start piece that it sounds that y'all are starting from different places, but found each other in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, as a duo, you know, where do you begin? Is it, you know, natural that one person will typically be like, I've got this idea, and they're usually the instigator, and the other person says like, oh, okay, let me pull it apart, put it back together? Or does it often change up who is so quote unquote inspired?
Yeah, I feel like we really take turns in a way, as far as like who has the first thought. Not like it's my turn now and it was your turn before, but more like if someone has an initial idea, the other person will be like, oh great, okay, and that inspires in me this idea, and then it immediately becomes something that can go somewhere very shared. And it's fairly random kind of who has that first idea, but it never feels like a struggle to then build something really balanced and cohesive from there. It's always exciting too when like someone has had the light bulb moment. Sometimes it takes us a while to find it, and then it's like, okay, now we can just go for it.
Which is interesting because that's also how it feeds then into the choreography, where sometimes we don't even remember who said what or who initiated what. It just melts all together. And I feel like sometimes we just go off on one little thing and that just becomes a whole piece, and we don't even know how the conversation started because we talk so much that it's like, and we're like, where did it actually start?
Yeah.
We don't know. So that's also the fun thing.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the videos too, it's hard to tell where one of you starts and the other one ends. I'm thinking specifically of the one with the piece through the red puffer vests and stuff. And you're like, oh, okay. You know, and so I can only imagine how that represents what the process has been. I love, whether it was intended or not, there's a little tongue in cheek that you're a choreographic duo, but with a name like Flock, that I imagine might be riffing off of your names. And it's not that you only create duet work, but I am also curious, since you do perform so much of your work, what is that like when you then try to translate this obvious interplay that the two of you have, both as choreographers and performers, but then to invite other people to the party, whether it's additional dancers for your projects, and then also how you're looking at a group of dancers when you get hired out for so many commissions, like the one with Groundworks?
I think we actually don't change a lot what we do together in the studio. So that's how we go in, and that's how we start. And I think because we're so open about it, and because we just lay it out to the dancers or whoever we're working with, I think they feel invited in. And that's also what we try. We're just showing them how we work and how we like the joy and how we like this melting and collaborating, and how we let someone sometimes guide or sometimes follow, and it just happens naturally. And I think that just invites people in already being part of the party. That's what I like. I don't think we change a lot when we walk into the studio.
Yeah, and because we are still performing our own work and are still young, and we did this on purpose, like quit our full-time jobs while we can really still do our movement fully. We really know what the moves are. We can really explain them and embody them. But that doesn't feel like a limit that we then place on the people we're with, because we're so in love with other movers and how they move. And so we want to always bring that sort of like, how can we make them shine as themselves within our clarity? So we try to keep that balance. It's not like you need to look like me and Flo in how we do it, but we will teach it really clearly and hopefully build something that the dancers can embody and feel really like themselves.
So when you do approach group works, and I'm only responding to how strong the partnering is, and I'm just really curious if it comes. Do you see it as a series of duets, or do you approach it in a different way when you're like, okay, great, we have more than two people? Because I think that's something that a lot of, we'll say, dance civilians maybe don't appreciate. Like, it is a speciality to choreograph duets or to choreograph solos, or some people who love to work with like huge groups of people. I think the last time I saw Hubbard Street, it seemed like there were 40 people on stage. So I'm really fascinated by this, like, moment that you can develop your artistic language and the way that y'all work, and then how you might work a little bit differently when you have more bodies in the space.
Yeah, for sure. I think we have had the most time in the world of duet, just because so much of our work as a company is just me and Flo hanging out in a studio. And we've made these long duet shows. How can you make a duet interesting for 50 minutes, that kind of thing. So we have really marinated in that world. But that doesn't mean that when we have a commission, that's what we want to do. In a way, a commission is like this exciting opportunity to play with others. The duetting is always super important. And oftentimes, like here, we did start with a duet the first day, because it does really help dancers also recognize and learn our language faster, because it's kind of like our like main language that we speak. But then it really becomes this like I was saying, kind of this world building thing, which with many people is a totally different game than
Yeah, no, for sure. I see it as like a big playground, what we can normally not do when it's just us two. So we really try to put our vision then out there for how many dancers we have, to really create something for the group which feels cohesive. Yeah.
But there always is a very high like interactive element, I would say.
Like always a relationship, a collaboration in the piece with everyone. Yeah, that's true.
And so much of what I witnessed in some of the other work is also, whether it's a duet, a quartet, a trio, it doesn't always mean that everyone is dancing all together all the time, but it's about visibilizing that relationship. Someone might be still or watching, and that's where you start to sort of spin out with a little bit of the story that might be behind what's happening on stage too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So one of the things that some of our listeners has heard me wax on before, and this is the recovering marketer, is that it's still one of the scariest invitations that you can make today can be to say to someone, come to my dance show. Because dance is so many things, right? Like maybe they saw Senkai Juku once and they went against their own will, and then they're like, oh my God, I don't know if I can do that again. So it is both the best and maybe more challenging thing about dance that there are so many different approaches. So, and you do talk about non-binary partnering and physicality and storytelling on your website, but how would you describe your aesthetic if you were to be trying to tell someone, come to my dance show without using just dance?
Huh.
I would say if you want to see some very high physicality, but also very high emotionality movement, come see our piece, because it isn't just a dance show. It's like a human experience to its fullest. Like, we like the idea of showing that humans can be more than we think through. So this kind of like kind of energy is what I want to like what I want to say when I want people to come, and what I want them to feel through what we do.
Yeah, and then we really try also, if we try to bring people, we're like, it feels like you're going on a journey. Come on this journey with us. It goes up and down. There will be something you like, maybe there won't be something you feel comfortable with, but we try to also put all the emotions into our pieces, so people will find kind of like an emotion they can connect with. And we're also like, dance, or like a dance piece can feel like a film, or it can be like, it can be exciting like a movie. So that's also huge to like be like the music, the movement, stage design. I mean, we don't have stage design, but yeah.
I mean, and you have made a lot of films also. So is there a different way that you approach choreography when you are making something for the screen than for the stage?
When we started with our films, for us was very important to give like the dancers the feeling of they're running the piece. So we were trying to actually give the opportunity. So if it's a 3-minute film, to give them the opportunity to run at least the full piece of 3 minutes, or we do no editing, or not as much editing as we can, just try not to cut too many times, because I feel like otherwise it becomes just like, oh, I can do it perfect again. And we try to bring this emotion of like, from performance live on stage, bring it to the camera. So there is, maybe you will fall, that's what happens, it happens on stage, but how do you get out of it? And we catch that on camera. So that was a huge goal on the beginning with our dance films, to really bring almost the same sensation of like the stage onto the film. There are not too many like, oh, I can make it perfect.
Yeah, and
I was just going to acknowledge, like, that's such an important distinction, to say like you're still taking the sort of endurance of live performance or in real life performance, and preserving that, even though the medium is different. Because we've seen how social media, whether it's TikTok or Instagram, has changed. We see that one great shot or that one great clip, but how many times did they do it and practice it, and so they could choose the one that seems to, like, I always do it this perfect. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Did you want to add something, Alice?
I was just going to say, I feel like also recently in doing more films and talking to more filmmakers and thinking about how filmmakers plot out something, they have so much focus on like, where's the tension, where is the conflict of the story. They have a very different like diagram of what it is to build like a 15-minute experience. And talking to them and learning more about their process, I think, has also then influenced how we think about our stage work as well. In that sometimes a dance piece might be like, okay, I'm just going to sit in this one idea the whole time, and that's what it is. And we've definitely made pieces like that in the past. But I think now we're more interested in these sort of tension points and how we build that in a slightly more filmic way. So they've definitely influenced each other back and forth, the film and the stage work.
I love that idea. It's my personal bias and belief that really a lot of dance making comes down to decision making, to the craft of something that it's, when you watch something and you're like, I think that probably is a really great piece and exciting to perform for the dancers.
Yeah.
But is it exciting to watch? Is kind of a question, without any, naming any names or anything. But this idea, I don't know that I've heard choreographers say like, where's the tension in this work? And to frame it a little bit differently as well.
Yeah.
How do you make decisions then? How do you know when a work is done, especially if you haven't been given a time limit, like, okay, we need 15 minutes, but if you have the sort of freedom to make something as long or as short, I'm curious how you navigate that, especially together.
I feel like so far it just naturally happens. We just arrive at a point where we're like, okay, either the sketch is complete and we go back and we just color it in, or this feeling of like, kind of like, this is our child now, this is the character of this piece. And yes, there are other ideas that we could do, but like, this child is complete. Let's send it out into the world. And some of the other ideas we have, we can put it into something else. Like, we don't throw away any material really as we're creating. We just make, and then it's done. So we're not so much like, let's try all these different, we're not so workshoppy, I guess.
It's true. We come into the rehearsal also with a very clear, like, okay, today we are building these sections. So we kind of know, oh, now maybe we get to the last section. Let's see. Oh, no, it didn't feel like the last section. We need another section to actually finish. We do love normally long, slow beginnings and long, slow endings, just because of the building of the story and the people and like introducing everyone. And I feel like it needs time. But
and easing your viewer in.
Yeah,
totally, exactly. Like, not just directly starting like blam, 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 blam. But inviting them in basically. And then also on the end being like, now you can like go with this feeling and see what you feel, and the journey is done. Yeah.
And luckily we're very aligned on that. Like, we'll feel out how our hills and valleys going, and we'll feel the same thing. It's very seldom that Flo will be like, oh, I think we need a whole other mountain, and I'm not feeling it.
So we were talking earlier that you have 3 days left with Groundworks. Do you have a title that you can share yet?
We don't have a title yet, no.
Does that typically come later on in the process?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Very good. And you mentioned that you started with a duet. How did you proceed from there? I'm particularly interested when sound then informs the process as well.
Yeah. We started with a duet, and the duet helped us kind of decide, okay, yes, we really want to play with the concept that we're working with, which is this idea, and these aren't the right words, but almost this like the demon and the angel type energy of the things that sort of like constrict us in, and those maybe are our own thoughts or outside voices, and then those things that like lift us up out of those constriction places. So that's our basic map, is playing with that idea. And we started this duet that then just felt like it needed to weirdly last quite a bit longer than we thought. So we ended up beginning the piece now with a 6-minute duet. And because it's so focused on these two people, it was then obvious to us, like, okay, we need to then like break out of that world into bringing in everybody else and creating sort of more relationship. And we've actually built this piece very linearly, or like we've built each section in a row and have really responded to like, okay, what did that second section become? What needs to happen next? What needs to happen next? Which we don't always do. Oftentimes we are more puzzle piecey about it.
Yeah. At one point we ask also the dancers, like, what are your like demons or angels, or what is something what brings you down, and what do you then do to bring yourself out of it? we use that as an inspiration also then to continue building, especially the second half of the piece.
Thinking about kind of who their characters then are, and then how they would interact and how the relationships would evolve as the piece goes.
And so then, are you working with music? Is it a soundscape? Because I think that's something that, you know, a lot of choreographers also are like, well, if the song is this long, that's how long the piece is. So I'm curious how it becomes an added element, even in limited production design.
Yeah.
It is music. We started we started to research with that idea. We started to research different kinds of music from people we know, from composers we know, or just like going even more into this research hole and being lost. But I think we were very clear.
Very early on,
we had our music.
Again, that like world building thing, trying to have music already in mind that would build sort of the arcs that we want. And then as we got into building each section, we had a couple days where we would play a couple different options over sort of the beginning material that we had. And then we settled on like, okay, it needs to be this song. And then we would build the rest of the section, like more specifically to that music. And we have kind of a weird collection here. We have like a really abstract song, a beautiful Handel moment, some Anna Muller, this beautiful cello, this like weird kind of postmodern, almost clunky clanky soundscape moment, and then a small little French song from the 1700s. So we have this like interesting, sort of all over the place soundscape, but it feels to me like there is this sort of like divine and then this kind of crunchy feeling that we kind of oscillate back and forth.
I'm just trying to imagine, what will your process be then for the title? You know, are we dumping out the Scrabble letters, contacting the Ouija board? You know, I'm a big fan of Post-its, and just hearing more about how you've been able to come together for music and movement decision making. I'm really fascinated how you might tackle that, because I think, you know, we all have to collaborate in different ways and negotiate relationships in our lives. So it's maybe in a moment where dance is imitating life. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like when it gets closer that we need a title, we will be like thinking about basically what we just talked about, these two things, but maybe it's not even, you know, are there other words for this, like this darkness and light, kind of like these ideas. Are there other words? So we would like research, we talk about it. I do think Alice comes up with a lot of words because it's just like, English is my second language. So Alice always comes up with like the perfect.
But I feel like it's always still a really fun discussion. Like maybe I'll come up with a word that's close, but Flo will be like, it doesn't feel, for some reason it doesn't have the right vibe. And sometimes we literally just go to the thesaurus and like look through other words, and we're like, okay, that word has this energy. And I love titles. I think they're so important and so fun.
Sure.
So we always spend time on it. And it isn't just like, are the meanings right? It's also like, is like the melody of it right? Does it look right on paper? Like what is the geometry of it?
So many things, yeah. And that's why we like to wait to see the piece completed and see what fits with what we see and hear what we need to see and read, kind of, read and then see. That's, the play.
And brilliant. I mean, it's lovely that you acknowledge and give some of that credit to Alice, but also not a surprise who, you know, you first identified as like, I'm the nerdy one, or, you know, or I had a nerdier approach before being part of Flock. I'm just, you know, here to dramaturg that. I'm clocking it.
It's very true though. And it really does play out on like all levels of what we do. Like there are definitely things that Flo leads or that I lead, and we do have different personalities, but that is like what is so joyful for us too, that we're not the same. And sometimes I'll spiral too far in nerdy land and Flo will like bring me back, so it also keeps me, personally speaking for myself, from like spiraling out into a place where I get like, maybe that's one of my demons,
Okay. Now we've turned into a whole confessional. I don't know if you want to share any demons as well, but yeah. So we were talking how, you're a little bit nomadic now because you often are stitching together so many opportunities. You're very much high in demand. Having had the opportunity to create work on so many different companies, groups of dancers, different cities and places, is there anything that you have found unique here in Cleveland and with Groundworks for this opportunity?
Do you want to go first? I feel like, and we told the dancers this like the first day, it's been like 6 months since we've done like a commission. We made work on our company and we've been doing a lot of teaching, and this group is just so good at absorbing information. It's just so nice. Not that students aren't beautiful, we love them, but it's a different relationship, and it's been so refreshing for us. And it isn't everywhere we go, even on a professional level, that you really feel like you don't have to say things over and over and over again. And maybe it's also like a good fit, but we've just had a really like,
they soak it up so much. Yeah, it's like a sponge. Like we say something and it's there and we directly see it, and then we can move faster too. And yeah, it went so much faster than I thought it would. And I feel also like with the one new dancer who came in, I feel like it directly was like, it didn't feel like she just joined 2 weeks ago or something. It felt like everyone just supported each other and they were working together in a beautiful way, which is also so nice. It doesn't happen in every place we go to, that directly, if there's a new dancer, that there is already this bond happening and they can feel like they can like totally be there and express themselves. So I also felt that the first day, everyone also really was themselves. I feel like they showed themselves, and that's very important to us too, which was really beautiful. And we could again move faster forward and build a nice story with each individual.
Yeah, and try some things that maybe are a little riskier, that we wouldn't try with every group, because we feel like they have that sort of stability.
Yeah.
And you can drop in faster. I mean, I love that piece of it. I think it also reflects, David Shimatakahara and I have spoken often about the focus really being on process and welcoming different types of processes into the Groundworks, universe, which is very different than if you're looking for a specific product.
Yeah.
And so how does that, as the ethos, also inform the studio and organizational culture of Groundworks as well?
For sure. No, I think that's huge. And you really do see it. There was even this one day where we did take out one step. I said we didn't throw anyone.
Just a step, not a section. Okay.
Today we did, right?
Yeah, we tried this like really dorky, like kind of too contemporary dance cliche to last, but they were just so committed to it. The dancers were like, yes, this is it. Like, let's go workshop it. Let's make it work. And that like lack of judgment too, really speaks to that like love of process, where it isn't about, am I going to look cool doing this or not? It's like, just like really eating it up.
And then you took the step out. You're like, thank you for trying.
It was our fault, not theirs. It was our fault.
There you go. Exactly. You were like, oh, I meant that was just in draft. That wasn't a real idea. Awesome. For our listening friends, I think will make sure to wrap it up here and to acknowledge that you can see the world premiere of this as yet untitled work this fall. And if you go to groundworksdance.org/fall 2023 For more performance information, you'll want to mark your calendars. October 13th and 14th, 2023 will be in Cleveland, and November 3rd and 4th, 2023, the performances will be in Akron, Ohio. So thank you all so much for spending your time here in Ohio, and it's been really delightful getting to talk to you too.
Same.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Sure. All right. Good night, everyone.